It's October 2015, a chilly autumn day. John Brennan, the director of the CIA, receives a strange phone call. He hesitates for a moment before picking up.
Hello, John Brennan.
Who is this?
You're a loser.
At first, it could seem like a juvenile prank call. But John Brennan isn't just anyone. He's one of the most powerful men on Earth.
Who is this? How did you get this number?
It was so easy, bro. You're such a dude.
What do you want?
I don't want anything. I already own you.
How much do you want?
We want $5 trillion.
This conversation would later be classified by the U.S. government as part of a broader campaign of cyberterrorism, identity theft, and harassment against officials. The consequences for the caller's audacity would be severe.
Why are you doing this?
We want you to stop bombing the Middle East.
Across the Atlantic, in the West Midlands of England, a 15-year-old sits in his bedroom, phone still in hand. His heart races. He can't believe what he's just done. He calls himself Kraka. He loves smoking weed. He's high right now. And he's the leader of a group called Crackers with Attitude, CWA. Kraka and his friends have humiliated and terrorized the U.S. security establishment on an almost unprecedented level. They've leaked personal data from police officers, FBI agents, and DOJ officials. They've hand-delivered classified documents to Julian Assange. Some of the most famous hacktivism attributed to Anonymous, that was actually them. And they did much of it for the lulz. This is their story. Years earlier, in 2008, another teenager in Virginia starts down a path that will eventually lead him to the same world. He goes by the alias Default. Default is a pretty typical American kid. He loves soccer, video games, and his dog. He frequently butts heads with his father, who works for the government. But Default isn't just any kid. His story begins when he starts cheating in video games, a gateway to something far more thrilling, bending computers to his will. He becomes obsessed with learning everything about hacking. At the time, Anonymous is at its peak, a decentralized global hacktivist group. Gaining access to their secret chats is like a backstage pass to one of the most notorious movements in cyberspace. Anonymous operates as both a force for activism and sheer chaos. They hack corporations, governments, and institutions, often for political causes, but sometimes just for fun. For Default, it's electrifying. He starts hacking random websites just to see if he can, but over time the allure of Anonymous begins to fade. Why? Because Anonymous is messy. The group has become so big that trust is impossible. Feds infiltrate their chats. Members are arrested left and right. Infighting and doxing are rampant. Worse, they're credited with hacks they didn't even do, often by more sophisticated groups. Eventually, Default gravitates toward smaller, offshoot hacker groups, like AnonSec. Unlike Anonymous, AnonSec positions itself as anti-anonymous, though their methods and motivations are often similar. Their operations sometimes serve political purposes, but just as often they're purely for the lulz. In these circles, Default's skills grow. He learns to control botnets, a network of infected computers under a hacker's command. Botnets can be used to spread malware, cripple servers, or even hack deeper into sensitive systems. One day, while poking around AnonSec's botnet, Default discovers something intriguing. A server belonging to Windsor University, a Canadian medical school. Within moments, he has full access to the university's financial records. He notices a staggering sum. Students collectively owe $9.4 million in tuition and fees. At the bottom of the list, a tempting button, delete all. How could he resist?
I thought maybe these people would appreciate a clean slate. Some of them owed $70,000, others over $100,000. It's debt that lasts for decades. So I deleted everything. I opened the server's PHP shell, sends the data to dev null, a system trash folder, and just like that, the debt is wiped.
This story, recounted in the Darknet Diaries podcast, raises a lot of questions. Did the debt really disappear forever? When asked, Windsor University refused to comment, but it's likely there were backups, both on-site and off-site. For default, however, it felt like a revolutionary act at the time. Unlike other hackers who might sell sensitive student data on the black market, he believed he was doing something good. The dark web is rife with data brokers, companies that harvest and sell personal information, from your browsing history to financial records. This data, often compiled into shadow profiles, fuels a billion-dollar industry. It's used for everything from targeted advertising to identity theft. Default's story illustrates the fine line between hacktivism and chaos, a line these teenagers gleefully crossed, reshaping the cyber world in their wake. As Default's hacking skills evolve, his motivations shift. What began as a pursuit of curiosity and challenge transforms into something deeper: altruism. By 2014, the world is shocked to learn that in Denmark, bestiality is still legal. Countries like Germany, the UK, and Sweden had already banned it, but Denmark remained a haven for animal sex tourism. For years, Danish animal rights activists had been trying to raise awareness of the disturbing issue, calling the places where it occurred dog brothels. The thought of it sickens Default, especially since he had a dog of his own.
It really pissed me off. What if someone took my dog and did that to it? I'd freak out.
So Default and his fellow hackers, aligned with the group AnonSec, decide to take action. They use their technical skills to attack the problem head-on.
We took down the Danish government website and defaced it, saying, "Did you know your government allows bestiality? These so-called dens where people pay to abuse animals?"
The hackers target and shut down bestiality websites with DDoS attacks, exposing images and evidence of animal abuse. The message spreads like wildfire, igniting outrage worldwide. The media picks up on the story, and soon Anonymous, incorrectly credited for the hack, gains the spotlight. But for Default, it's bittersweet. The hack works, though. More people now know about the scandal, and protests erupt. By April 2015, Denmark bans bestiality. Meanwhile, Default's hacking skills are rapidly advancing. He's not only gaining a reputation for his cyber skills, but also becoming an early adopter of cryptocurrency. He accumulates over 1,000 bitcoins, a fortune that would be worth over $40 million today. But with his growing wealth and notoriety comes increased paranoia.
"I know I've made powerful enemies."
Default admits. He becomes hypervigilant, paranoid about being tracked. He refuses to use his own Wi-Fi and instead connects to free Wi-Fi from a Dairy Queen half a mile away using a satellite dish. He routes all his activities through Tor, encrypts his devices whenever he's not using them, and waits half an hour for them to decrypt when he turns them back on. He keeps everything close to the chest, revealing little to anyone about his operations.
"I know I have a lot to lose,"
he says. But even with all the precautions, it won't be enough to prevent the inevitable. In May 2013, a U.S. intelligence contractor named Edward Snowden finds himself in a similarly precarious position. A 29-year-old living in Honolulu with a comfortable life, a loving girlfriend, and a $200,000 annual salary. Snowden discovers a devastating truth. The U.S. government has the capability to spy on anyone, man, woman, or child, on the planet, and he's unwittingly helped make that technology possible. Horrified by the implications, Snowden realizes that exposing this information would make him a criminal. He knows the severity of the felony charges he'd face: lifetime imprisonment. But the knowledge that his government is violating civil rights on a massive scale weighs on him heavily.
I can't keep this to myself.
Snowden decides. He quietly begins collecting evidence of the NSA's secret activities, and when he downloads the last batch of documents, he knows it's time to act. He tells his employer he needs a couple of weeks off for health reasons, buying himself time to leave the country undetected. He heads to Hong Kong, believing it to be a safe haven, a bastion of free speech that might offer him protection from the U.S. government's wrath. There, he meets with journalists Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald, revealing what he's learned. The NSA's mass surveillance programs, which had previously been dismissed as conspiracy theories, are real. Snowden's revelations send shockwaves through the world, sparking a global debate over privacy and national security. His whistleblowing causes many young Americans, like Default, to reevaluate their country's practices. Default, deeply inspired by Snowden's bravery, decides he can't sit idly by while his government infringes on the rights of others. He's determined to show those in power what it feels like to be watched, tracked, and exposed. He wants the high-ranking intelligence officials to experience what it's like to have their privacy stripped away. This desire leads him to Kraka with Attitude, CWA, a hacking collective founded by a 15-year-old kid named Kraka, who's based in a small town in the West Midlands of England. Kraka, too, is angry. Angry about the U.S. foreign policies, particularly its involvement in the Middle East. He becomes fixated on Palestine, seeing the U.S. as directly responsible for the suffering in Gaza. Kraka's rebellion is political. With the help of his hacking skills, he and his group begin targeting sensitive documents online. One of their first high-profile victims is James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence under the Obama administration. Clapper's personal information is easily accessible online: his phone number, address, and more. Kraka uses this to break into his email and post proof of the hack on Twitter, catching Default's attention. Kraka takes it a step further by rerouting Clapper's home phone calls to the Free Palestine movement. Default, impressed, publicly tweets his respect, and the two hackers begin to chat. As tensions rise, they bond over their shared disdain for the intelligence community. They're incensed by Clapper's testimony to Congress, where he denied that the U.S. was spying on citizens.
We do not spy unlawfully on Americans. We only spy for valid foreign intelligence purposes as authorized by law,
Clapper had claimed. Kraka and Default are livid. They, along with other hackers loosely connected to CWA, decide to target more members of the intelligence community. Their goal is to embarrass these officials, to show them they aren't as untouchable as they think. At the top of their list is none other than John Brennan, the director of the CIA. Like Clapper, Brennan's personal details are easily accessible online. Kraka tracks down his Verizon phone number, and with a bit of manipulation, he convinces Verizon's tech support to give him access to Brennan's account. After using the information he has, Brennan's account number, PIN, and email address, Kraka hacks into the CIA director's AOL account. With each hack, these teenagers are proving a powerful point. No one is safe from their reach. The hackers of Crackers with Attitude are making sure the world knows they are the ones pulling the strings. Once Kraka is inside Brennan's email account, he uncovers Brennan's private cell number, which he shares with Default. The two of them immediately begin bombarding the CIA director with calls, targeting both him and his family. They spew insults, mocking Brennan's position and the perceived harm he's causing in the world. At first, it might seem like a prank, but Brennan doesn't know who is behind the harassment, or if it could escalate further. The constant calls force him into hiding, with heightened security for him and his loved ones. Meanwhile, Kraka, Emboldened by Default's encouragement, and perhaps drawing inspiration from Snowden's own whistleblowing, decides to escalate his actions. Kraka takes to Twitter, posting screenshots of sensitive documents from Brennan's emails. But this is just the beginning. Kraka reaches out to WikiLeaks and, in October 2015, Julian Assange publishes a cache of documents. Among them is Brennan's personal SF-86 form, a highly classified government document detailing his criminal history, past drug use, psychological records, and more. There are also Bush-era documents revealing controversial policies on Middle East operations, and internal correspondence about how to legally justify interrogation tactics, essentially legalizing torture. The breach cost the CIA around $1.5 million in damages and forced relocation costs for operatives, but it's the embarrassment that lingers. Brennan, who was supposed to be one of the most secure individuals in the world, had his personal information accessed with laughable ease. As Kraka's group, CWA, Crackers with Attitude, continues their campaign, they gain access to even more sensitive government data. They breach the FBI's Deputy Director, Mark Giuliano's accounts, uncovering a database containing the personal details of thousands of Department of Justice officials and FBI agents, which they then leak. They also gain access to a booking system with the records of U.S. prisoners, including those of well-known hackers, further embarrassing institutions at the heart of American power. Kraka knows that by attacking these powerful figures, he's stepping into dangerous territory. He's fully aware that the government will retaliate, though he doesn't know when or how. Kraka admits bracing for the worst, knowing that his actions might lead to imprisonment or worse. Default, meanwhile, is caught in his own paranoia. He has become more cautious, constantly changing his methods of communication and staying hidden, but his mistake comes when he becomes overconfident. While hanging out with an old friend, drinking and chatting over Xbox Live, Default slips up. He brags, revealing too much, carelessly mentioning his role in the CIA hack. He never thought his friend would take him seriously, much less act on the information, but months later, when the FBI knocks on his door, Default realizes the gravity of his error. The agents raid his home as his computer is decrypting, seizing all his equipment, including the hard drive with over 1,000 bitcoins. In that moment, Default knows it's over. Kraka, too, faces his own reckoning when British police raid his home, seizing his computers and arresting him. As he was underage, Kraka receives a relatively light sentence, spending 2 years in juvenile detention, becoming the first minor in the UK to be sentenced for hacking. He has since turned his life around, pursuing a career in cybersecurity and leaving his criminal past behind. For Default, however, the consequences are much harsher. He is sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $145,000 in restitution. Much of his time is spent in solitary confinement, where he has time to reflect. In court, he admits,
I thought what I was doing was right in terms of political justice, but 2 years later I realized I was completely wrong.
Meanwhile, Edward Snowden, the original whistleblower who exposed the U.S. government's surveillance programs, faces his own trials. After leaking his information, Snowden sought asylum in Russia, as U.S. officials openly speculated about his execution. His actions sparked an international debate on privacy and government overreach, but it came at great personal cost. In December 2023, the Biden administration renewed a controversial surveillance program, which allows the government to spy on individuals around the world, including its own citizens, without a warrant. The program is supposed to be used only for legitimate intelligence purposes, but a 2023 court ruling revealed the FBI had misused this database over 278,000 times, spying on a wide range of individuals, including political donors, January 6th rioters, and Black Lives Matter activists. For those who dare to challenge the U.S. government in the digital age, the consequences are dire. Whether you're a principled whistleblower like Snowden or a frustrated teenager like Kraka, messing with the government will change your life forever. So, it's important to ask, is it worth it? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.